Good evening, rockers. I'm going to turn my camera on so everybody can see me, hopefully. Camera on.
There you go.
Hi, everybody. This is On the Rocks Total Entertainment, live from Las Vegas. I I am the Vegas Rock Goddess. We are here with Tim. Well, how do you
Yes.
pronounce your last name, Tim?
Alan. Alan.
I'm getting like double echoes here. Hold on. Okay, that's cool. Awesome. Technical difficulties, don't we love it, folks?
You can't have it without it.
I want to fix this. See if we can. Oh my gosh. Oh, I think I just cut us off.
I can still hear you.
Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Let's see if I can hear you.
Well, I can.
Are you
I
there,
can hear
Tim?
you. I sure am.
Okay, very cool. Awesome. Let's talk about your band, Smoke and Shadows.
Yes.
This band is amazing. I think I started following you guys on Twitter, and then I started pulling up your stuff on Spotify.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely great. I even took notes so we could talk about some of your music.
Oh, cool.
Now, why don't you tell the audience that doesn't know a lot about you or your band how long this band has been together as a unit?
Well, it's just like a lot of bands. There's a evolution. Um, some of the stuff on the album is a little bit older with the very original incarnation, and you can hear different singers in the recordings, which is some of the different progress. And you can definitely hear. I'm trying to think of the right words.
Okay, it's all right.
It started off with definitely a very heavy Iron Maiden Dio kind of influence, which you can definitely hear, especially
Oh
with
yeah, that was the first thing. Yeah.
and then more recently, my George Lynch influence is starting to seep in a little bit more with some of the riffs and everything like that. Because I'm, the the melodies and the arrangements have always been a collaborative thing, but the music is 80% my guitar parts. That's just the way it works out. So George Lynch was always one of those guys that, every guitar player's got 1,000 influences, but he's one of those main guys for me,
Yeah,
and
I love
so
George Lynch. I've seen him many times. I have a bunch of live videos on TikTok that I recorded of him this year with Andrew
yeah,
Freeman.
yeah. I think he was the one singing the last time I saw Lynch Mob when I was in Reno. Right now I'm in New Jersey, but I go back and forth
Right.
between Carson City, Reno, Tahoe area, and here. And I think it was about 3 years ago that I saw them at a club in Reno, and I think Andrew Freeman was singing, and they were spectacular.
Oh my God. Andrew Freeman is like the busiest guy in rock and roll. He was not only in that band, he's in Last in Line. And then
Yeah,
he also did a side gig for Great White.
right.
So he's super busy too.
And it's kind of funny of talking about that particular lineup because the drummer that played that show, who's also in Ace Frehley's band, we just had him do drum tracks not too long ago for a
Oh,
song
very
for
cool.
us. So yeah, so his drums are gonna be featured on a song not too long from now.
Oh, very cool. So now is your lineup current with everybody that's in it? Like Tammy, right, playing bass? No. Okay.
Well,
It's not for us to talk about.
there's certain floating ideas, and there's certain there's a little bit of instability. It's still a band, but there's a little bit of instability just with the amount of traveling that I've been doing the last couple of years, and it's a lot more emphasis on recording and whoever happens to be available for recording. But probably that will be the stable lineup that going forward. But you
Okay.
never know in this
Yeah,
business.
and it's funny. It's funny you talk about that because a lot of bands that I interviewed when I was on Keep Rock Alive, um, they were in multiple bands. They had multiple situations going on. That's not
Right.
anything new now. That's like the new norm.
Well, as much as I hate that phrase, um, yeah.
Sorry, but
No. It's not nothing personal at all. Yeah, and with me, it's almost necessary to have several different outputs because, like, with every season, I want to do something slightly different. So this is the thing that I focus on. This is the one that the name I've had since forever. And but like in the winter, I write heavier, darker songs. Once it becomes springtime, I go into Y&T Van Halen mode, and neither they don't necessarily juxtapose
right,
into one project. And I get in, as a guitar player, I get in full retard jazz fusion mode, and so you want to have a million different outlets. And
right,
a drummer that's great for a straightforward rock band isn't necessarily going to be the drummer that's going to work for you know doing the Hendrixy thing or going into instrumental land. So try to, you know, get as many things out there as possible.
right. Yeah, I
Which is
can.
why there's sorry.
No, 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 no. Go ahead. Sorry.
Which is why I have some instrumental stuff thrown in with the other stuff just to try to, you know, and there was a couple things that I just figured, hell, well, let's put out there, and I never intended on releasing. They were just things that I would recorded and would listen to every once in a while. Go, and maybe someone will like it, and if not, so what?
I mean, that's what rock and roll is all about, man. Getting it out.
Right.
You
And
know.
and the mistakes kind of show that you're human. I mean, what's cooler than listening to a Led Zeppelin album and hearing a phone ringing in the background and they never took it out of the mix? You know,
Right.
the idea of perfection is kind of like contradictory to what rock and roll is. It's supposed to be slightly chaotic and a little bit messy and
Right. I mean, I don't think there's any rock band on the face of this earth that's completely perfect.
right. Right. And the ones that were completely perfect is because of their imperfections.
Right.
Early Van Halen, what made it work is David Lee Roth always being sharp, and that pushed the music. If he was flat, it would have sounded wrong, but being sharp gave it edge. So that imperfection added to the excitement level of it.
Right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the album.
Yes.
Because I've been listening to it all week.
Cool.
So I have a few songs that I really enjoyed. So I
Hopefully
kind
those
of
are the songs I got stories for.
I hope so. I mean, we got a lot to talk about tonight, so this is very cool. Okay, so let's talk about Lost in Paradise.
Yeah, that's one of the songs that I'm the most proud of. That song was written almost stream of consciousness in the studio because we were very fortunate for the most current lineup that the singer Dan has his own studio, and he's a very good engineer. So that literally started off with the bass player Brian at the time literally played the intro bass line, that distorted thing in the very beginning. And my brain, when I heard that, the melody that I heard was from that Y&T song, I Don't Want to Lose You. So I don't want to lose you. So when I heard
Right.
that I added the cuts to finish that vocal melody. No one else knew that I was doing that. They just heard the music. There's no way they could tell that I was
Right.
purposely taking a vocal melody that I knew and turning it into an intro to a song because I heard the bass line. And then I had, like, literally the night before, had been messing around with something that reminded me of early Queensryche, that And we had that complete arrangement and written out within 25 minutes. It was one of those things that you just hope happens in your life. We just
Right.
started jamming, and then I would do this change and that change. And the drummer that recorded that song that was with us for that time period was very freeform. So the way that song flowed was perfect for him because he was able to just it had that great, I guess, kind of like whoever played drums on Tommy Bolin's Teaser. It had that kind of syncopated vibe. It wasn't locked in. It was kind of, and it was really the quickest a song has ever come together in my life.
Well, it's funny because I'm a writer, and I've been writing a script, and when I first started it, it started out as an idea. And I don't know if this happens to you. Well, you were just kind of talking about it. Things just started coming out.
Yeah,
Like, put this down. And you don't know
yeah,
where it's coming from.
yeah, exactly. And like, we always do things on purpose too on top of that. So
Right.
when we got the basic tracks recorded, like almost immediately we're like, let's put that on tape now. We're not on tape, but we're still going to use those terms
Right.
because we cut our teeth with those terms, not to betray our age. um but when I did that intro, then it was like, okay, what is one of my favorite things in the universe is when I go to see Ted Nugent and he goes. So that's how I started that intro, with that Ted Nugent kind of thing and just letting it ring out for as long as I possibly could. And it had the ideas just flow to you, and we're like, it's easy just to do a little cool melody on top of that, but to make the guitar just be mean for a second. And that's all that I intended on doing. And it's like all those little things, and the all the little licks that I do with the call and response in the verse, you know, I could pretty much say that my intent, not the execution, but my intent for any song I've ever written in my life and how I view everything is this perfect mash between Dawkins' Back for the Attack and Shout at the Devil.
Like, kind of,
Somewhere,
I think that's kind of why I like your vibe, because it was reminding me of a lot of different bands, but
yeah,
yet the sound is unique.
right, right. And so like all those trade-off licks were me trying to do what George Lynch did on Back for the Attack, where there's fills in between all the vocal lines, like those little quick little, or even that part with the bridge, and I did the. I mean, how George Lynch is that?
Yeah, that's for sure. It's funny you mentioned George Lynch, because I guess he's putting Lynch Mob back together again.
Yeah, he realized he's not selling as many tickets without the name.
Well, he's playing. I guess one of the first shows he's playing is at the Whiskey next
Cool.
year. So it's good to see him back out with that format. So
and it's good to see him really being creative, and because aside from the dark years, mid 90s and the early 2000s,
right.
When he was just not, whatever he was doing wasn't what he does. He may have been creatively fulfilled if you believe what he says, but it just, until I saw him, as one of my favorite players, I was really disenchanted with a lot of stuff he did, like Smoke This, and the two mid 90s Dokken albums just didn't sit well with me. It's like,
Yeah, I remember those two albums, but I think that was the beginning of the end of
yeah.
Dokken as we heard
Well,
it.
Dokken had already been broken up for about 5 years at that point
Right.
when they got back together to do that. But I remember, I think 2003 or 2004, I remember, I think it was Birch Hill. I don't think it had closed yet, in Old Bridge on Route 9. And I remember seeing George Lynch open up for Yngwie. And I was like, I hope he's playing well, because the last couple of times I'd heard stuff from him, I was really not happy. And he had Kelly Keeling from Baton Rouge singing for him.
Right.
And that was the time, but just about the same time he did that album Furious George of all the covers, where Kelly Killing was singing and he's doing all the old Montrose songs and Deep Purple songs and stuff. But he came out on fire, and I was like, thank God George is back, because I was so frustrated with one of my favorite guitar players not being up to par. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And but he just floored me. And the last couple times I've seen him, and every subsequent Lynch Mob release since they got back together with Smoke and Mirrors, no less. I've been, because I love bluesy stuff. I mean,
Oh
I don't
yeah.
think I don't think you can be a guitar player and not like just little bendy notes that mean something. It's
Right. Yeah, I love the blues. Blues is kind of a little bit of my background since I'm originally from Chicago, the
Okay,
home of the blues.
right.
Uh, yeah, so yeah, blues are a great asset to rock and roll.
Yep, yeah, exactly. That's one of my favorite lines in the movie Crossroads. The one with Steve Vai, not the one with the Britney Spears, where he said, that Muddy Waters invented electricity.
Right, that's a great movie.
Oh
It
yeah,
makes me think about that. I haven't seen that in I think probably 10 years. I'm gonna have to watch that because I love that movie.
that was one of those things that I would sit there because I think that movie came out in '87, and I remember sitting there forever trying to play some of those things Steve Vai was playing, especially that
Crazy,
Paganini
right?
bit. There was once upon a time I could play that, but I'm not even going to attempt it now. But I
Well,
loved all that and but he later turned into Bad Horsey.
I love Steve Vai. I followed him for decades,
Oh yeah, I mean,
since
for
the
years my
beginning.
entire life was based on legato stuff, like because that Steve Vai was, as much
Right,
as I like George Lynch, I'm even a bigger Steve Vai fan. It's just
right. Well, I mean, they're two totally different players. You know,
right.
they
Yeah,
they come from different parts of the. I say the music world, but
completely. And one's completely intuitive, and one's completely schooled that uses intuitive thoughts. George Lynch
right.
knows after he played something what he played. Steve Vai knows before he plays something what he's going to play.
Yeah, his
it,
mind just works faster than his hands do, I guess.
yeah,
Um,
and it's cool because Steve Vai comes from starting off with the rock background, and Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix, and even though he never talks about it, you could hear in his playing how much the teaser, not teaser, but the Billy Cobham Spectrum album, uh, Mark Bolan, no, Tommy Bolan, sorry, I always said the wrong one, comes out because all the whammy bar stuff and the legato stuff, and
right,
even the early Alice Cooper group stuff. When you hear "Drive Me Nervous," that's where Steve Vai got some of that stuff from. You
right.
know,
Old Alice Cooper.
yeah, he
So,
doesn't talk about
okay,
it much anymore.
since we're talking about influences, and for both of us anyway, what influences you? Like, is George Lynch your ultimate player, or do you have other people that you look up to as far as a guitarist?
It's kind of it's weird. I mean, the list is infinite. I love
Oh,
so many guitar players, but the four that always stay with me, and it's the two ends of the spectrum. Two of them are very technical. Two of them are very precise players, and two of them are just, so you got Steve Vai and George Lynch. Those are the two technical guys that just like pushed me and motivated me, that I always wanted to be when I was 15. And the other two are Ace Frehley and Mick Mars. So there's something about when I heard all the, I mean, how do you not love Ace?
right. I love Ace Frehley. He's like, I mean, I grew up on Kiss, so I'm a huge Kiss fan. But you mentioned um, Mick Mars, and it's funny because I was talking to Kieran Robertson last night from Jeff Tate's band, and we
Yeah.
were talking about influences, and he said that Mick Mars was a big influence on him and the way
Yeah.
he plays.
Yeah. I don't think there's anybody that started playing in the 80s that doesn't love Mick. I really don't, because
He's underrated as a guitar
he,
player.
he very and he was probably the first guy to play slide that didn't sound like the blues. You know what I mean? Like when you hear that insanely fiery solo on Piece of Your Action. I mean, that's nothing different than Billy Gibbons did a million times. But it that doesn't sound like anything, it's just cool. And I think 2/3 of the solos on Theater of Pain is just like boogie woogie slide playing.
Right. I mean, this past time I saw them at the end of the world tour, with Joan Jett, Def Leppard, it was really sad to see him. He wasn't really in front on the stage. He was kind of on the side, like on the background.
I was actually at that show in Vegas.
Oh, you were? Okay. So do
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
I was actually right in front of him.
Yeah. To
I was
me,
like,
it was kind of, he was like being shadowed out. Like when they tried to put the spotlight on him, he would not move forward.
right. And well, and I don't, and I kind of think this might be Tommy Lee's fault, because the frequencies of the PA. Do you remember how bad is? Like rock and roll bands don't need that frequency. That low frequency does not need to exist in rock and roll. And
Yeah,
knowing that Tommy Lee doesn't like rock and that's what he likes,
right.
I think, because like I remember when they kicked into Looks to Kill. So you hear for half a second, and then the drums come in, and you don't hear the
Yeah,
guitars.
see, there, you know, I made the statement before without getting technical and pointing the finger at people. That was not a great show.
No,
I'll be
I mean,
honest.
I can live with the harmonizers and the tracks for Joe Elliott's high notes. I can live, because the band's great. They don't even
Yeah,
need the tracks. Joe Elliott's the
no,
only one that needs the tracks. But you know, it's a shame that they even use them, because they're a great live band. They don't need to do that. They actually would sound better without them. But because the people want to hear things the way it was on the record, you know what? That's what made Zeppelin so great. What am I going to hear tonight? you
right,
know, what version of Whole Lot of Love are they going to do tonight? When you listen like How the West Will Won, you hear 15 different versions of Whole Lot of Love. Some of them blow you away. Some of them are like, yeah, but you at least get to hear that experimentation, and the band at least gets to
right.
try to do something different.
And I think the whole thing with that show, I mean, Joan Jett killed it. Okay, I'm just gonna say that Joan
I
Jett
actually think
killed it.
I think Poison was the highlight of the show.
Yeah, Poison too. Great band. I mean, I've been following them for decades. I think I've seen them 10 times.
My very first show back in 1987 was Poison opening for Rat on the Dancing
Yeah.
Undercover thing.
I mean, it's great to see CC back, man.
Yeah,
I
because
was like, yeah.
he played his ass off. I mean,
He was
I
tearing it up on stage. I
he was.
really enjoyed that set.
And I don't care what anybody says, just because they play poppy stuff. You know what? Poppy music can be fun. You know,
Exactly.
and you know what? They've always been a cool band. You know,
They're all
yeah,
about fun. They don't take themselves seriously.
they don't. And
That's
the
what I
funny
like
thing,
about that band.
right? They were basically for the 80s what Cheap Trick was for the late 70s. You know,
Right.
just good hard edge pop music. You know,
Exactly.
and I fucking love them. And I've always confused people, because two of my favorite bands have always been Poison and Testament. And most people can't see that juxtaposition makes sense,
Yeah,
because they're both great at what they do.
exactly. But getting back to that show, it was robotic to me.
Well, part of it was because of how they had to have it set up.
Yeah,
Neither of them could have a great stage, because it had to be able to taken down and set back up in a half hour. You know, they had exactly, I mean, it was timed to the T. It was exactly a half hour from when the one band ended to the next one started. And of course, when you got that many bands with that short of a time frame, it just,
it was too tight. It was too tight of a time frame. But I mean, it was a good show, but I was disappointed when I came away
I
from
was
that
happy
show.
that I got to see Mick one more time.
Yeah,
That was the only reason I went to the show, because I'd seen Poison 15, 16 times. And,
right.
you know, and other than the first three Def Leppard albums, I'm not a fan. they were great. I don't like overproduced fluff, but that doesn't change the fact that Phil Collins is a fabulous guitar player,
Oh my
and
God.
and there are no words to put to how good Rick Allen actually is as a drummer.
And you know what? I love Adrian.
But
Yeah, I mean Vivian, I'm sorry.
Vivian,
Vivian
yeah, I
Campbell.
mean,
I don't know why Adrian came into my head. Anyway,
well, because he played with Adrian Vandenberg and
yeah,
Watchmen.
that's probably why I said that. But anyway, yeah, Vivian Campbell, let me tell you, is the one of the most unique players because I got to see him. I got to see Last in Line
Uh-huh.
last. I think it was the end of last year. I mean, I was up front. I mean, killer. I mean, I got some great shots of Vivian Campbell. But the problem, I'll tell you right now, the technical problem with that show was they had his stuff turned up way too high.
Right.
And what it was doing, it was drowning out Andrew Freeman. And
Right.
I couldn't hear anything coming out of his voice other than the guitars blasting.
Right. And but you have to ask yourself, is it a technical problem or is it an ego problem?
I don't know. That's a good question, Tim. That's a good
I mean,
question.
you can ask Steven Tyler all day about guitar players that are too loud, right?
Right. But yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to point that out. But yeah, I mean, Vivian, I mean, that it was turned up so hard, I couldn't even hear Andrew. And I
Right.
talked to Andrew after the show, and I told him, I said, "Hey, you were great if I could have heard you."
Right.
He started laughing because he knew exactly what I was talking about.
Right. And especially when it's a tribute to Ronnie James Dio.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, it's a tribute to Ronnie James Dio. Shouldn't the vocals be somewhat prominent?
Right?
I mean, it's
You would
guitar
think?
music. It's guitar music, so the guitars have to be loud. But
Right.
I mean, if someone's even capable of doing those songs justice, you're gonna want to hear those notes because fuck.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, it was a great show. I mean, but like I said, I would have liked to have heard Andrew Freeman a little bit clearer
Yeah,
for that show.
yeah. He's a spectacular vocalist. That
Oh my God, he lives here. I see him out and about, sometimes at the clubs and whatever. But yeah,
Well, it's pretty
amazing
much got to the
vocalist.
point where any musician that makes a living doing it is either living in Vegas or Nashville at this point.
Right. I mean, I talked a lot about that. I mean, Vegas is becoming one of the mega hot spots for rock and roll. I mean, all
Right.
kinds of music, really. But I think rock and roll is definitely going to make a comeback in 23.
If it ever went anywhere.
No, I mean, but you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
pandemic, all that other crap that we had to deal with. I think it's just kind of resurging. You know how it is.
And people are really, especially for the what they call legacy acts. There's not a very big window. You got
yeah,
to catch them while you can, and people know that. So they're going out there, and when you see the older bands, you want to hear something else, and so it definitely makes you want to check out what else is going on out there.
right.
And there seems to be a lot of people doing some interesting things.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I mean, you've got Aerosmith. They just canceled the rest of their residency. Steven Tyler is not doing well. He's sick. So,
yeah, I hope he's just sick, or if he's relapsed yet again.
let's hope not. Word has I'm not going to start rumors or nothing. They just said they're going to come back in 23. So,
I,
we're
I'm
going to
I'm
see.
still that's another one where I'm glad I saw them the last couple times that I did, because I don't think I'd
Yeah.
want to see them without Joey Kramer. I don't
Oh
think
my God. No.
because he's one of my favorite drummers. I mean, he's not as simple as people think he is. When you hear, especially like when you listen to Nobody's Fault, some of those fills that he threw in there, and that groove, the way he plays, it's that perfect, that first perfect combination of John Bonham and a Phil Rudd simplistic kind of thing. But
Right.
and he's got such a feel. You can hear. I mean, there are drummers that you can tell who it is, but Joey Kramer is kind of like Alex Van Halen. You hear it just a beat, and you know it's him.
Right. Yeah.
So I
He
don't
was
think
an amazing drummer.
Yeah, so I don't think I want to see Aerosmith without, um,
Right.
just like I will not. Motley Crue is my favorite band, and I will not ever see them without Mick Mars.
Oh, of
And
course.
and you can call me hypocrite because I have no problem
Oh,
seeing Kiss with Tommy
you're
Thayer.
loyal. You're loyal to the originals.
But
Okay?
but
Just
at the
like
same
I am.
time, I have no problem seeing Kiss with Tommy Thayer. It's weird.
Right.
But the difference is Ace threw his career away twice. I'm just grateful that Ace got his shit together and has a thriving solo career now. So there's
Right.
a difference between somebody, it's time for him to step down if it really is. If you heard what John Corabi said not till last week, talking
Yeah,
about how he
I
thinks that they're
did.
forcing him out, and I tend to believe John Corabi over Nikki Six.
Well, I'm a big Nikki Six fan. I love 6 a.m.
Motley Crue is my favorite band. They always have been. They always will be. But there's just a few things that as I get older, I'm just like, okay, let's just remember how they were.
Right.
You know,
Remember that band? Like, I remember because I got first row seats for the Theater of Pain tour. I
right,
still have some amazing pictures. I mean, I was in the front row for that. That's
right,
the Motley Crew that I want to remember.
right, exactly. Just like is like I said, I don't. When I saw Kiss a year and a half ago, it was every bit as good to my 15-year-old self as the reunion tour was, because for the first time ever, Gene was having fun. He wasn't just playing the character, he was happy to be up there. So there's things now that make it just as good as it was, and Tommy Thayer plays like Ace. Fine, whatever. And right now I look at it as I get to see Kiss and Ace Frehley. Like last April, I saw Ace Frehley open for Alice Cooper at the GSR in Reno, and I was like, I'm front row watching Alice Cooper and Ace Frehley. Life's good.
Yeah,
So
exactly. That's a great tour. I missed that show. I was out of town and I just came back into town, so I missed that show. I was kind of mad at myself, but
right. And so that's why it makes it a little bit different than the Motley Crue thing, because Ace did it to himself, and then he redeemed himself by staying sober for X amount of years and putting out a couple of really good albums. The last couple albums I've loved.
yeah, he's got a great band.
Well, like I said, I had Matt record some tracks for another song, and he's a super cool guy, Matt Starr, and one hell of a drummer.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That whole band Ace Frehley's got. We got to thank Gene for that, right?
Yeah,
Because everybody in that band is so super talented. I mean,
yeah.
when I can't, for some reason I can't remember their names right now, but when the guy with the beard sings any Paul songs, you're like, oh my god, it sounds like Paul Stanley's up there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similarities in that band, but it's good to see Ace back on the road.
Yes.
And with Alice Cooper is a great, that's a great mix.
I mean, Alice is. I'm a huge Alice fan, so any Alice
Yeah,
show is awesome.
right.
I mean, I freaking love Alice Cooper. I mean, he's probably the only artist that I like every period of his career. Like
Yeah.
I can listen to Flush the Fashion and Zipper Catches Skin and Data and think it's brilliant. Whereas a lot of other bands, when they go through that phase, I'm like, no, I'm not pulling out the Elder anytime soon. And
Right.
Generation Swine staying hidden in the collection.
Oh my God. Let's not talk about the worst album ever.
Right.
That's a whole other show, Tim.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
a whole
exactly.
other show. I might
Exactly.
invite you back for that show.
But Alice always managed to make all of his phases still good,
Right.
even when he delved into other kinds of music. As a matter of fact, when he got into darker industrial sounding stuff in the 90s, I mean, Brutal Planet and Dragon Town are two of his best albums ever. I mean, those
Because
things
it
were
was
brilliant.
different.
Yeah, but they were still Alice. They were still
Yeah.
dark. The lyrics were still.
He still put his stamp on it.
And those shows, I don't, in a 50-year career plus, since their first album came out in 68, 69, seriously, I think the Brutal Planet and Dragon Town tours were the best shows he ever did.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember seeing him like 3 times on each of those tours, and it was just like, this is just fantastic.
Yeah. Alice Cooper is like classic.
Yep, exactly.
Classic.
And because he's not really a singer, he's always on key, but since it's just a a personality thing, and it's just about delivering the song. As he gets older, it works better. You know,
Yeah.
a 72-year-old Alice Cooper is even meaner, and the part is more real. It's almost, when you go back and see a 23-year-old Alice Cooper, you're almost like, that's kind of comical. But him now, you're like, he means business.
Right. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I think the fact that he is just every bit as good live and is having fun and means every note is just fantastic. It's
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
like Jeff Beck. How are you that age and playing better than you've ever played before?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, it's great. It's the same thing with Sammy Hagar. It's like, I mean, really? You're still hitting those notes?
But you know what though? Sammy Hagar, I've seen him before. You know, I've seen him with Van Halen, of course. You know, he's got the circle now. And I mean, he is all about fun. He doesn't
Yes.
take any of his stuff seriously.
Right. Well, I mean, and what's more fun than
Right.
that's just, especially, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the Sammy era Van Halen, but seeing that Live Without a Net video when they go into One Way to Rock and seeing how much fun Eddie's having playing that song and how much fun they're having on stage,
Yeah.
just that was just beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, that's just classic.
Exactly.
Let's talk about this other song that I was listening to.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're here to talk about
We're here to
music.
talk about you, Tim, and we're talking about everybody else. That's okay though.
Well, yeah,
The show's all about rock and roll.
Music's everything.
Right, exactly. Let's talk a little bit about Wasted.
Okay.
Like, tell me a little bit about the background on that song.
That was a song, that was a riff that's been around for as long as I've been playing guitar. You know, and I've had 20 bands where everybody's like, "Yeah, that's all right," but I don't, yeah, no, we're not gonna, yeah. It never got used. And we're sitting around thinking about, this was probably like 3 years ago. We need another song. And I said, here. And I didn't present it as an idea. I said, I'm tired of not using this. So this is what, check this out. It's like, okay, cool. And so the main riff was the same as it's always been. And the only thing that changed is the part after the second chorus was never there before in other versions that I'd written over the years. I was listening to the song that is the component of my favorite guitar tone in the history of the universe. You know, the Michael Schenker's tone on the live UFO album, when you hear Lights Out, when you hear the so basically I played that backwards, so basically I took, okay, where did my pictures go? I basically
This is live, just to let you know, Tim. We're live on Facebook.
If I dropped the pick live, I would use my fingers, which I'll do now. So I basically played that solo section. I just basically played Lights Out, kind of reverse.
Yeah, I think the guitar riffs got me on that song.
And the chorus was an interesting thing because, like I was talking before about wanting to hear things sound like a real band and have a real live feel, and that I don't like perfection. So the shout vocals we did on that, instead of going, "Hey, let's do a better take," or "Hey, let's that," it's like, "Hey, that sounds that's like when you listen to Too Fast for Love or the first Iron Maiden album. It's got that rawness to it. It's like, so let's keep that there." And so it was just me and Dan doing like 4 different tracks a piece, and you can hear, because my voice is much higher pitched than, it's got that Michael Anthony-esque quality without the being on key. And I really wanted it to have that bratty, like when you listen to Toast of the Town or something like that. So instead of making it perfect, we kept it with the vocals, the choruses, the shout vocals were a little bit off key.
Raw.
Yeah. So no, I'm going to say it right. It's off key, but it worked, I think.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know, and that song's a lot of fun to play because it's got that almost testament kind of thing. So I was talking about them before with the riff, where it has that you can hear that if the drums were busier and we're throwing some feel, if I were to go, so it's got that, but in the drums, I purposely I have this thing for that big Dio kind of tom and a boom slide with the. I love that, like in the beginning, in the middle of Rainbow in the Dark, how you hear
Oh my God, that's like one of my favorite Dio songs.
yes, that little maneuver there is one of my favorite things ever. So I try to put it in wherever I can. So the fact
Just
that I was able to put
sneak it
that
in
in,
there.
yeah. So I always refer to it as that Dio thing because that that boom boom with the tom and the bass, that everybody's done it, but you really associate it with Dio.
Right,
So
for sure.
I definitely added that there, and so that's pretty much the story behind that one.
Again, that was like those two songs just stood out for me.
Cool, cool.
But since we're talking about rock tonight, let's talk about our favorite top 5 records of all time.
Okay. Well,
Okay, this is going
yeah,
to be a tough one for both of us, so I'm going to let you go first. You're my
okay.
guest.
Okay. Well, because I wouldn't be playing guitar without this album, and this is a very common album for guitar players, but I wouldn't even comprehend life without Kiss Alive.
Okay, Alive 1 or 2?
There is only Kiss Alive.
Oh, just one. I thought there was a 2.
Well, no,
Where am I going?
Kiss Alive 2 is cool, but Kiss Alive, you had all these songs that were kind of okay.
Yeah.
When you hear Strutter on the first Kiss album, you know that it's a good song. You like it, but you're like,
God, I love that song.
yeah. When you hear Rock and Roll All Night, you're like, this is a decent song, but there's no solo, and it's kind of blah. Hotter Than Hell's okay. She's okay. The first 3 albums, a lot of the studio tracks are just okay, and they took these songs that you knew were good that just sounded okay, and now they're on this live album, even though it was doctored up and everything, but it's still, the initial genesis of it is still a live performance.
Yeah, that's still a great record, though.
Yeah, and these songs came alive finally, alive, literally. So Rock and Roll All Night, that version became iconic, and the first song I ever learned was so yeah, that one's definitely
I
Kiss
know we got
Alive.
a lot of Kiss fans out there watching this.
Yeah, I'm an Ace freak, like I said.
Okay, so Alive is one of your top 5. What are your other ones?
Definitely, this is where I got to pick 5. I have to spread it out a little bit, so I'm gonna have to go with Shout at the Devil.
Okay, Motley Crue.
So, yeah, depending on the day. One day I might say Too Fast for Love, but I'm gonna go with Shout at the Devil.
Right.
Dawkins, Back for the Attack.
That's a great record.
Yes, the very first Iron Maiden album with Paul Di'Anno. I love Bruce and I love everything they've ever done, but that first album is just
it's like that first album is so raw. I remember staying up and watching the midnight special, and I'd sneak out and watch TV, and I remember Paul Di'Anno and Iron Maiden going on that show, and he was just so raw, and he was like, it was just great.
Right, and that original drummer had something. I mean, I love Nico. Nico's one of my favorite drummers, but there's something about, especially like in Transylvania when they do those hits, and it was just everything about that album. It just mesmerizes me, and taking my CD collection is at least 1,000 deep. So to pick 5,
yeah, trust me.
So I have to pick the ones that I listened to the most and influenced me the most to become
Right.
favorites. So like since I already said Back for the Attack, it can't be the first Lynch Mob album because Back for the Attack was a little more influential. I already knew how to play by the time I heard Wicked Sensation, but Back for the Attack is part of me learning how to play guitar. So that it's a bigger deal. So that
Right.
was four I said, right? So I said Shout, Alive, Back for the Attack, first Iron Maiden album. I'm gonna have to round it up with Queensryche The Warning.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there are days, when I'm in that mood, I might say Operation Mindcrime. There are days that I
Oh
might say um, uh, Rage for Order. I'll never say anything after Empire, but um, thank God for Todd La Torre. Those last three albums have been spectacular.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, The Warning was definitely
Yeah.
fundamental to my development. And although there was a time period between me and like three other friends when Operation Mindcrime came out, where it was like a month-long journey for all of us to discuss and analyze what we learned about the storyline. Now when
Oh
you listen to
wow.
it, it's like, oh yeah, that's the story. It's pretty simple. But when you first heard it, you're like, what does that mean? What is that? And so we would literally have these discussions for hours talking about
Yeah.
what the storyline meant
Yeah.
and who excuse me, who Dr. X is and this and that, or that lyric, what that pertained to. And
Yeah.
but
Okay,
I
so
think
I guess it's my turn for my 5 records.
yes it is.
Okay. The first one I'm going to say is Love Gun
Oh
from
yeah.
Kiss. I
Uh,
mean,
yeah, I mean,
yeah. I mean, the licks just keep coming with that record. It was just spectacular for
oh
me.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's funny how you base yours all on play, like how much you actually played the record.
right,
Um, well, one of my favorite records was High and Dry
right,
from Def Leppard.
right.
Um, that was like so raw,
Yes.
and it was just incredible at that time.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I must have melted at least 5 of those cassettes in my car, and
Right.
one I could not remove. Okay,
Right.
I'm just gonna say that it's probably still melted somewhere in the abyss.
It's kind of funny you say that because the 3 vehicles ago, I had a Chevy Malibu, and this was not too long after Saints of Los Angeles came out, and the CD player got to the point where I couldn't put another CD in, or I couldn't take it out, and it wouldn't accept another one if I put it in there. So, for about a year and a half, all I could listen to was Saints of Los Angeles because it was
Oh
stuck
my
in the CD
god! Oh my god!
player.
I don't know if I could handle that.
But
Um, okay, so like the third record. Okay, um, I'm from Chicago, so I'm gonna say the first Disturbed record
okay,
is one of my favorites. Again, because it's raw,
right,
and at that time they were hungry. Not saying they're
right,
not now.
right,
Um, but it was just an album that just it was like edgy. And I saw their first show. Um,
oh, cool.
at it was at the Metro in Chicago. It was their first actual official show. They had 2 sold out shows. And I mean, that place was packed. I mean, they're from Chicago, and it
Right,
was their last hometown show before they hit the road.
right.
And that's just one record that I just can't give up as far as, you know,
Well, yeah, memories have so much to do with what music stays with you.
yeah. Um, Bon Jovi, okay, has been a big part of my life. But everybody's going to think I'm going to pick Slippery When Wet, but I'm not. I'm
See,
going to
if I
say
were to pick,
I'm going to say
um,
New Jersey.
Cool. I'd pick
was
Keep the Faith out of Bon Jovi albums.
yeah. Keep the Faith. I was just watching the video for that. Keep the Faith is one of the best songs I think that John and Richie ever wrote.
To
It's
me,
just
it's Dry
yeah.
County for me, especially
Yeah.
that solo that Richie
Well,
plays on.
yeah, did you listen to that one? Well, I gotta say it's a tie because I mean I like New Jersey, but I also like the country album they did.
Yeah, and me not so much.
I
Uh,
I really I really liked it. It would to me it was too radio friendly.
right,
I mean it was like all cut and dry, but it was still a good record. You know, it was
right.
still a good record. Um, but that kind of those are the two that I kind of like that are kind of tied.
Yeah,
But
then they're one of those bands where I would never say, you know, especially the last 20 years, I wouldn't even listen to a note. And I'm not necessarily fans of them as human beings, but their first few albums, you can't not have memories of hanging out with friends and cruising the strip in
right,
Reno and listening to them and there's certain songs like you can't have old friends and listen to Blood on Blood and
right.
not get a little misty eyed.
But
So
it's funny that you mentioned that because I think the crossroads for them is when John did his solo record. And I think that put a bad spot in the band, and I think things started going downhill from there
I
after
think
that.
I think it was when Richie released his solo album and John had the record
Those
company
are
step
great. Those are great.
and John had the record company step on it so he wouldn't lose his guitar player. I think that's when it went downhill.
Yeah,
You can't promote this. You can't let him get successful.
yeah,
I'm the one that's making you the more money, so you can't let this. You can't push this. You have to let it sit on the shelf.
yeah. Well, they're supposed to go on a 40th anniversary tour, and Richie is back in the band.
Well,
So it's going
he's
to be
the only,
interesting.
he's the only part of the band I ever really loved. So without Richie Sambora, there's
He's
no
a great guitar player.
He's very underrated.
Those two or three solo albums that he has out are really he's an incredible songwriter.
Absolutely, and one of my best memories is 92 or the very beginning of 93. Might have been in February of 93. I remember because my brother's 5 years, well, he passed last year, but my brother's 5 years younger than me. And he was 15, I was 20. And I remember taking him, a couple of my friends, in my buddy's pickup truck, drinking all the way there. Not my buddy driving. we're in the back of the cab. I'm getting my little brother drunk, and we went and saw Bon Jovi with Arcade opening up, and
Oh wow.
that was a cool show.
That would be a cool show. And like the last one I'm going to mention is Styx Cornerstone.
Which one's that? I'm not necessarily a Styx fan, but which one's that?
It has a picture of somebody has like a genie lamp or something in the sand. I think
Okay.
it's kind of greenish in the front. But let
What
me tell you, that album is like the best album
they're
I
one of
think
those
they've
bands
ever
that
done.
if you're not a fan and there's a lot of songs you don't even know were them and you realize you like them, but like when I hear Tommy Shaw singing Renegade, that's like one of the best songs ever. But I just they were I think part of it is what's the singer slash keyboard player's name?
Oh,
Dennis DeYoung.
yeah.
He always made it so I wasn't really too into them because he was like, "What are you doing in a rock band?" but you know what? Any this is the point where I've gotten. Anybody that plays music that touches people, I think is great. We all have our opinions. We all have things we don't like. There's
Right.
stuff, and the stuff that I don't like may sound exactly like something else I like, but for some reason I don't like it.
Right. It's
And
just
we have
one of
our
those
irrational
things.
and we have there's certain bands that I can't stand. There's certain bands that I love for no reason. But yeah, anybody that can do this, that can communicate something inside themselves with an instrument, I can at least respect their existence.
Right. Well, let's talk about what your plans are now for 23 for this band.
Well, to finish the song that we had Matt Starr do the drums on. Initially, I had a recording that, and I sent him the recording, and he played on that. And I was going to just take the drums out and use the original tracks. And then I heard what he did, and I'm like, I wonder what I would do on that now, because the recording was actually a little bit old, but I always wanted to use the song, which is why. And I'm like, so now it's like, okay, now we're just going to re-record all of it and layer it on top of the drums. I had him do it the beginning of this year. The year did not go as planned as far as getting things done. But that there's 2 or 3 more songs that I want to get recorded, and I think I'm going to do the same thing as last time, throw in a handful of instrumentals in between there just to get that out of my system so I don't water. Part of it is because I love it. Part of it is if I do that and can say, here, this is an idea I had that's just on the guitar. I'm not trying to throw it and stick it in a song where it doesn't necessarily fit.
Right.
You got to have that outlet.
Now, so do you plan on getting a band together and going out, like, and playing?
I would absolutely want to do that. And it's an idea that if it comes to fruition, I'd be perfectly happy to do. I mean, we've gotten plenty of, hey, we've gotten plenty of short-term offers for shows that I'm like, I can't quite get things together that quick of a notice. Right. I got a singer 2,500 miles away, and we would need a little bit of rehearsal time.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's like a lot of bands are, they live everywhere.
Yeah. They're all doing things via Zoom.
Right. And I also don't want to do something half-assed.
Right.
I don't want to just put something together,
Yeah.
And finding the right people sometimes can be a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's definitely a process for sure.
And it's even harder when you have a very clear vision of what you want to do. I think a lot of times when people are labeled hard to work with, whether it's a Richie Blackmore or Yngwie probably is hard to work with, so I don't know if that is going to be the example. But a Richie Blackmore type person, I think it's more of he knows what he wants.
Yeah,
and
very
when you
collected.
have a vision, and you have every right to be able to express how you want. So it's a matter of finding the right people that share in your vision, as opposed to finding somebody that's capable, that's going to fight you every step of the way.
Right. So yeah, you definitely want to take your time and make sure everything is like perfect.
Right. And also, I think it's right now, because it's not like it used to be. People don't just go check out a band. They have to already know your music to go see you live. It doesn't help that in any given town, if you have a half a beer, the local revenue agent's going to pull you over. So, and collect income for the state. So it's people don't just go check out music. They have to already know your music.
Exactly.
So it's more, in my opinion, for what we're doing, it's more important to get more music out there, to get more fans. Once you have more fans, then you can bring the music to them.
Right. Let's tell everybody where they can find your music at, Tim.
You can find pretty much any streaming site, except for iTunes only has 3 songs. They, for whatever reason, about this time last year, took down 3/4 of the album, and I never got a straight answer why they did it. But it's Apple, and so what? But anywhere, you can go on YouTube, you can go on Spotify, you go on Prime Music, you can go on, if it's streaming music platform, it's on like 85, 90 different platforms. So
that's great. Okay.
So you just search Smoke and Shadows, preferably with the album title Blood and Fire, because there's an electronic music group from Toronto, I believe, that plays just electronic music, completely the antithesis of what we do.
Okay.
So you might come across that. But so, anywhere you can find music, you can.
Right. And they can follow you on Instagram, Twitter.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, but Facebook's kind of like a why bother for musicians at this point. Because it's just like anything else. A private Facebook page, you post something, it reaches 6 people.
Right.
And so what? And they're
Facebook
even,
is a whole different egg,
yeah, it's almost like you do it it's compulsory, and if you reach 2 people, then great. But Instagram and Twitter are where we focus the
Right.
marketing. And
Okay,
we get
so the last question I want to ask you, Tim, this is a question I ask a lot of people. I actually asked Alex Hart and Kieran Robertson, and I'm going to be posting that quick interview on the next few weeks. But if you could have a dream collaboration with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
full band.
Well, I mean, yeah, collaboration.
Okay, well, the drummer would have to be. Why is it you're just about to say something and your brain just goes, no.
I know it's a difficult question. It's
no. I know. I'm picturing him. I can picture him playing. The drummer from Montrose that's played on everybody's albums. What's his fucking name? I use his name every time I'm explaining to a drummer what I want to hear. And I can't remember, but that Denny Carmassi.
okay.
His right foot alone. When you hear the drums in the beginning of Rock Candy, you're just like, that is just so fucking cool. And you name, I mean, the albums he played on a bunch of Heart albums. He played on the Coverdale Page album, and you listen to the drums on that, you're like, wow, this is, he is one of my all-time favorite drummers. He's got to be Denny Carmassi on drums.
Okay, that's really cool. I really like that.
And my favorite bass player has played with everybody. Everybody knows him, but not everybody knows his name. Is Marco Mendoza.
Okay.
Not Mark Mendoza from Twisted Sister. Marco Mendoza, who was in Thin Lizzy, Whitesnake, Ted Nugent's band, Blue Murder. And he's just and he's a sweetheart of a guy. He is the nicest person on the planet. He's just an incredible bass player.
That's cool. I've heard of him.
Yeah, I mean, he's just fabulous. I mean, I think he was the bass player for Whitesnake from like when they first got back together in like 2004 till about 4 years ago. Maybe a little bit longer than that, but he is just, for a while there, every other show I would go to, he was playing bass for. In the summertime, I'd see him playing bass for Ted Nugent. Then I'd turn around and he was playing bass for Thin Lizzy, which was
I mean, that's the norm now.
Right.
You're in multiple bands.
And if I could bring him back from the dead, I would kill to have Ray Gillen singing.
He's a great singer.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Jakey Lee first came back out after he left Ozzy and stuff, and I remember hearing that Badlands album, and I remember first hearing. Can't play the harmonic because I dropped my pick. I don't know where it is.
That's okay. But Tim, thank you so much for coming on. It was great talking to you about rock.
Oh, I could go on for a week and a half.
I know. Between the two of us, we'd probably be on here and we'd be like sleeping as we're talking about rock.
Yeah, we'd go back to the following Queensryche album, and then go into the EP, and then.
Oh, I know. And like my favorite Queensryche album, I have to say, is Operation Mindcrime.
It's my daughter, who's 16, was told me the other day that she prefers concept albums.
And that's definitely a concept album.
And I said, well, you've grown up listening to an album, but I don't know if you were aware that it's a concept album. I said, this is the concept album.
Right, of all time. That's
exactly.
for sure. Well, let me catch up with you, Tim, in the next 6 months or so and see what you're doing. Cool. Keep in touch with me.
Absolutely.
Let me know how things are going. I'm a huge fan. You've got these are some really great songs.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope everybody checks you out on Spotify, because I mean that's where I've been listening all week.
Absolutely, and if you check it out, follow too.
Yeah, absolutely. Hit that follow button. Just like everybody's watching tonight, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the
Yeah,
like button.
it helps the algorithm. So every time you listen and follow, it's a
Right.
better chance of being randomly played to somebody else another time somewhere else. So,
Exactly. Exactly. Well,
so if you want
thanks, Tim. Take care of yourself. Have a happy new year.
you
And
too.
we'll talk sometime in 23.
Sounds awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay.
I think you just hit your end button. Do
I
you have
was
an end
looking
button?
for it. Yes, there we go. All right, take it easy.
Bye, Tim. Wow, Tim was great. Smoke and Shadows is an amazing band. They're going to have some great music coming out in 23. So we'll be checking back with Tim in the near future to see what he's up to. I want to thank everybody for watching On the Rocks tonight, Total Entertainment. In the next few weeks, I'm going to be placing a interview that I did with 77 Shakedown. This is a guy that's amazing. If you haven't heard his music, you can definitely check it out on Spotify.com. And you can also check him out on YouTube. He has his music directly on the channel as well. It is Sunday night. I hope everybody's having a great Sunday night. I'll be checking back in with you soon. I will be posting the quick interview I had with Kieran Robertson and Alex Tart from Jeff Tate's band. Two super cool guys. They were really awesome to talk to. So it was a quick interview, so I'll be posting that as well. So I want to wish everybody a happy Sunday. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. We've got some great interviews coming up. I've got Jeffrey Carlson coming to talk to me, as well as Peter Cat from Playhouse, Eric Jacks from Wild Street. He's been doing an acoustic tour across the U.S. So I want to definitely chat back with him and see how things are going. Also, Faith and Failure will be making an appearance, and definitely more bands and more music to come. So you'll be hearing about that in the coming weeks. I will be going to LA to the Whiskey to see the Raskins December 28th as they open up for Jack Russell's Great White. They have two shows there. The 29th, they're opening up for Jet Boy. This is a couple warm-up shows before they hit the road in 23 for their world tour, and a new album to come. So super excited to see the Raskins live. If you haven't heard the Raskins, you can check them out on Spotify.com. I want to wish everybody a great evening, and I will see you next time.